Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'd like to call the May 23rd, 2023 Longmont City Council regular session to order. The live stream of this meeting can be viewed at the city's YouTube channel. It can also be viewed at longmontpublicmedia.org/watch or on Comcast channels 8 or 880. Can we have the roll call, please, Don?
Mayor Peck,
Present.
Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. Here. Councilmember Martin. Here. Councilmember McCoy.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. Here. Councilmember Waters. Here. Councilmember Yarborough. Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a reminder to the public, anyone wishing to speak at first call public invited to be heard will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be able to speak at the first public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their name on the list will have the opportunity to speak during final call public invited to be heard. You can also speak at second reading on public hearing items. And you're asked to add your name, address, and you can speak for 3 minutes. So with that, we are going to move on to the approval of the May 9th meeting minutes. Meeting minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
So it's been moved. The May 9th minutes have been approved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor McCoy. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Are there any agenda revisions, Dawn?
I don't have any agenda revisions. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Do we have any motions from councilors to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Seeing none, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Mayor, I actually do have one or a question tonight. I know when we set the schedule for the meetings in June, we established, I think we scheduled a study session on June 27th. And that was dependent, that's the week during Colorado Municipal League. And I think some people are making plans to go to that. So when we talked about it, we discussed putting it on, but also having the ability to cancel if we needed to. And so I wanted to touch base with council tonight since that's going to fall during CML week, and I'm not sure what the schedule is and what council wants to attend.
How many of us are going to CML? 1, 2, 3? 3 of us.
Okay.
So
But I'm not staying down there.
I'm not either. It's in Aurora, so I'm not staying. We could be back for definitely be back for the meeting. So I think we should still hold the meeting. What do you think? Are you staying down there, Sean?
I think I was just for access, but
As long as we have a quorum. Okay, you won't be here?
I would prefer to hold the meeting because I feel the lack of study sessions.
Okay, Councilor Waters?
I mean, either way, I will certainly be here if we're gonna have a meeting.
Okay.
I'll be here too.
And is that what you needed to know? Are we going
Yep.
to schedule that meeting? Great. It looks like we will. We're now at special reports and presentations, and we do have a proclamation. It's a proclamation designating June 3rd, 2023 as National Trails Day in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas Longmont's public trails provide access to the great outdoors for a variety of activities such as biking, hiking, jogging, wildlife watching, and connection with nature. And whereas public trails interconnect our community parks, district parks, neighborhood parks, and open space. And whereas Longmont has acquired nearly 1,100 open space acres for the development of the St. Vrain Greenway Trail, which one day will extend from Airport Road in Boulder County to St. Vrain State Park in Weld County. And whereas Longmont's trail system is an important component of our urban community and has positive impacts on the health and well-being of our residents. And whereas the spectacular views of the Rocky Mountains and surrounding natural areas make it a pleasure to hike on public trails in Longmont. And whereas the City of Longmont would like to recognize one day out of the year aimed at trail advocacy and service. And now therefore I, Joan Peck, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim June 3rd, 2023 as National Trails Day in Longmont. And this was given to us by Ruby Bowman. So Ruby, would you like to come up and say a few words and accept your proclamation? Ruby? There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Peck, for the proclamation recognizing National Trails Day in Longmont. I remember when I first moved to Longmont 26 years ago, there wasn't much of a trail system in the city. The Left-Hand Creek Greenway extended for about a half mile from the pedestrian bridge near Pike to Kanemoto Park. The St. Vrain Greenway to Sandstone was still in the process of being developed, and I remember attending a charrette for the design of the St. Vrain Greenway at the Sandstone Ranch House. It took years of planning and funding to get where we are today. And our trail system in urban areas and in wild places like Button Rock are the quintessential city amenities. Our trails immensely improved our quality of life. They transformed the character of Longmont for the better. So it's appropriate to recognize one day out of the year to advocate for and to provide service such as volunteering for rehab work for our trails. Again, thank you, Mayor Peck, for the proclamation. And before I leave this podium, I would like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of Parks and Natural Resources staff. They are the ones who built our trail system. And I would like to give a shout out to Natural Resources volunteer Taylor Gifford for making June 3rd a special day of service for residents. Their work makes Longmont a better place to live. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruby. Would you like to have a picture of us giving you the proclamation? So we do have a presentation. It's from the I Have a Dream Foundation of Boulder County, and I would like to invite Perla Delgado up to the podium.
Control, that's what it was. Thank you. She had prepped me, by the way, and I forgot already. Thank you very much, council members, for this opportunity to talk a little bit about who we are. I'm part of the I Have a Dream Foundation. I'm Dr. Perla Delgado. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I also want to thank you for creating a space and a place where people can thrive At the I Have a Dream Foundation, we truly believe it takes a village to raise a child. We're excited for the opportunity to expand our village with our newest partnership with the Longmont Youth Center. As we enter our 33rd year working for and in collaboration with the community, it goes without saying that we can't do this work without partnering with youth and their families as they successfully navigate school, college, and career by providing a holistic academic, social, and emotional program that works in collaboration with many partners across our community. It's very important for us to do this work in collaboration with students and families and approach it through a strength-based approach. I'm proud to say that our vision, we're a world where all children have equitable access to the educational and career opportunities that ignite their highest potential, spans all across the United States, including New Zealand. There are 12 affiliates. And the New Zealand chapter, I want to say, serves over 1,500 students in their communities. While there is so much great work happening across the globe, I'd like to bring you back to our local affiliate. We currently work for and with over 580 plus students and their families, collaborating with them as they pursue and continue their academic, social, and emotional goals. We have several cohorts across the community, and this is just a visual aid of where they're located. And many of our cohorts are located within the schools, while many of them are provided opportunities and space in the out-of-school space in different community centers. And I'll talk a little bit more about what our partnership with the Longmont Youth Center consists of. But I wanted to show you a visual of what this means. In our out-of-school space, the students that we work with are comprised of a diverse group of students across the community. Our graduation rate for our 2022 class consisted of a 95% graduation rate for our Dreamer Scholars. About 25% of those Dreamer Scholars worked throughout the 2022-23 school year, which is an important component to what we do in understanding students and meeting them where they're at. Additionally, about 62% of our Dreamers who graduated in 2022 enrolled in a post-secondary pathway. A lot of our curriculum work has been focused on meeting students where they're at and providing them the space and the resources and strategies to find what their passion is and to support them through that journey. Our program spans over 10 plus years of developing relationships with students. So our students typically start with our classes when they're in first grade, and we follow them all the way up until their post-secondary enrollment. And often, in many cases, they're with us up until their first job. And that's something that we pride ourselves with, because through the collaborations that we formed with the 2 school districts, Boulder Housing Partners, the city, and the county, we're able to provide our students with tutoring and academic support during the academic year, as well as enrichment opportunities and a pathway to understanding what their college and career pathway might look like. We also offer summer programming in collaboration with the 2 school districts. So our program consists of either after-school programming during the summer school period or during the day, depending on what the student has been required to do or enroll, if they're required to enroll in the summer school program. A large component of what we do is family engagement. I think this is something that we have prided ourselves with. We develop strong relationships with students. As I mentioned, we're with them anywhere between 10 to 15 years. And what we've decided to do this past year and a half is to add what we call a 2-generational approach. It's a model that's been tested across the country and has allowed us the opportunity to work in collaboration with the parents, guardians, and caregivers of the Dreamer Scholars. So for 33 plus years, we had done this work with Dreamer Scholars, and most recently we added their parents to our model. And the model consists of meeting the adult learners where they're at. Many of our parent students, our adult learners, are enrolled in an ESL program in collaboration with the Front Range Community College. Several of our students in our adult ed program have completed their GED or high school equivalency degree. And we also have a group of adult learners that are enrolled in a post-secondary program. This is either a 2-year, a trade program, or a 4-year institution. Several of our Dreamer Scholar parents have completed their GED and ESL, and we've had a number of students who have completed their certification either in a CNA program or a short-term program in the year and a half that we've started this program. Again, it's really important for us to be able to move the needle forward and faster, and that's why we expanded our model to include a two-generational approach to ensure that we were able to fracture and or eliminate the cycle of poverty for many of our students much faster than we had before. This can't be accomplished without the work that we do with our partners. As I mentioned several times, our collaboration with both school districts has allowed us to continue our programming not just in the out-of-school space, but during the day. Several of our staff members, especially in the St. Vrain Valley School District, support the campus community during the day with a study skills class. They're able to connect with our Dreamer Scholars and ensure that they have the support and an added adult in their life that can encourage them to go to a post-secondary program. 8 of our cohorts are located in Boulder Valley School District, and 3 are located in the St. Vrain Valley School District. We also have a number of programs that are located, or they're community-based programs in partnership with Boulder Housing Partners. And I'm really proud to, and that's why I'm here today, not just to talk about the work that we do and the expansion that we've added this past year and a half, but I'm really excited to share with you that we have partnered with the City of Longmont's Longmont Youth and Family Services to launch our next class of 45 Dreamer Scholars located within the Timberline PK8 community. The robust services that the Longmont Youth Center provides and the expertise that exists within that staff is an added bonus to what we already do really well with our Dreamer Scholars. So I'm really excited to be able to launch our new class in the St. Vrain Valley School District. The only qualifier for our program is that students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. That's it. We don't turn any students away. We definitely talk to the students and their families about the importance of getting engaged, getting involved, and meeting students where they're at to ensure that they have a successful pathway. One addition that I'd like to share with you all is we have really worked with our partners to ensure that we're complementing the work that's happening during the school day and in the community and not competing with them. And really finding what we can do within the out-of-school time to continue to support students and their families on their quest, not just to complete their high school diploma or GED, but to enroll in a post-secondary pathway and ultimately complete our programming. But I can talk about the work that we're doing, but I do have the pleasure of introducing one of our alums who is a testament of the work that we've been doing for 33 years. So I want to bring up to the podium Jason Valerie, who will talk a little bit about his experience and what he currently does.
Thank you, Perla, and thank you, Council, Mayor, for inviting us here today to talk about the organization and the impact that I Have a Dream has had on the community over these last 32 years. I want to take a minute just to tell you a little bit about my story with the organization as a testament to the impact that we're having on this next generation of youth. I was born in Boulder County and grew up in Lafayette in my early formative years, and was brought into the I Have a Dream Foundation in 4th grade. My mom was cleaned homes for a living, and my dad was a trash truck driver. We had very limited means, and a class launched at my elementary school in 4th grade, and I was just incredibly lucky to have been included in that class and be part of the I Have a Dream Foundation. Shortly after that time, my parents divorced, and I moved up here to Longmont with my mom. And over my time with the I Have a Dream Foundation, there was just a number of really amazing opportunities that I had that I would have not otherwise had access to. I was actually just reflecting on this one the other night, and I don't think I've ever even told Perla this story, but there was an opportunity to participate in something called Peace Jam. It was a week-long camp down at DU, and we had the opportunity to sit with the Dalai Lama and learn about his teachings and spend an entire day planning a peace garden with him. And just an amazing experience for me to reflect back on and think that I wouldn't have been able to participate in if I didn't have the connections and the opportunities that I Have a Dream Foundation brought to my childhood. But it didn't stop there. Like, I had a program director who was responsible for my class, and while my cohort of dreamers were all attending school down in Lafayette and I was living up here in Longmont, he still made an effort to include me in all that programming. The after school time is the strength of the organization. It's for parents like my mom, who was working and wasn't there for me when school let out. Well, I had somebody who wanted to touch base with me and a stable adult role model in my life that would come and pick me up and take me down to Lafayette for programming to make sure that I had the opportunity to participate. When there were challenges like, my mom wouldn't pay the phone bill and we wouldn't have any connection to the outside world, and he couldn't get in touch with me to find out how I was doing and if I was, doing okay in school and had what I needed. He'd show up at my house and just knock on the door and come check in on me. And, throughout my early years, having him in my life was incredibly valuable. He was stable. He was somebody who I looked up to, who provided me that mentorship. I had so many great opportunities. I like to say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, I was a stereotypical sort of computer geek as a kid. I was just fascinated with technology and computers, and I Have a Dream connected me to the University of Colorado for an internship when I was in 8th grade. And I got to go participate and work in the IT department as an 8th grader and got to build relationships there and mentorships there and got real world experience with working with this technology and writing software and code. And when I graduated from Longmont High in 2000, I immediately went into the software industry, and I've been in the software industry ever since. I now have been with Microsoft for 10 years, and I'm a director of product management. I manage a large global team of software developers and product managers building our core cloud platform. And I have to reflect back on my early years growing up here and think that, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have all that support. It takes a community. It wasn't just the I Have a Dream Foundation. It was my teachers. It was other community members. But enabling all that was the common glue of having I Have a Dream there and someone to support me and someone to look up to. I've continued my role with the organization, and now I'm on the board, and I'm really excited to launch this new class with the city this fall. It's great to see yet another generation of dreamers in the town I grew up in. Really appreciative of the city, specifically Christina Pacheco from the Longmont Youth Center and Jenny Diaz-Leon, who've been great partners in this. We're looking to council, and our call to action is how can we work better together to deepen this partnership? What are the opportunities for us to look at grants together, expand our fundraising so we can reach more kids in this community? There are more than 45 first graders in Longmont that are on the free and reduced lunch program. I can guarantee that to you, and we only have funds to access 45 of them. And so through your partnership, through getting the word out to our citizenry, we want to make that message clear that there's more outside of school time that needs this kind of support than what our district provides, and the I Have a Dream Foundation is a great organization that's leading the way on that. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great testament for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to open it up to any questions that council members might have for us regarding our programming, regarding the new class that we're planning to launch.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from councilors? It looks like we all just love the presentation and
Thank
agree
you.
with you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate this opportunity again to connect with you all and to share a little bit about who we are and the collaborations that make our mission come to life. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we are now at first call, public invited to be heard. You have 3 minutes, and don't forget to give us your name and address. The first one is Ellen Wilkin.
Off. It's a toggle. Good evening, Mayor Peck and council members. I'm Ellen Wilkin at 3926 Hawthorne Circle. This evening I want to talk about bicycling. Bicyclists and other trail users need a safe alternative route to the St. Vrain Greenway Trail during the Resilient St. Vrain Project, or RSVP, construction. This is particularly poignant given the upcoming National Trail Day on June 3rd, which I didn't know about when I decided to speak tonight, but I am heartily applaud. It also follows logically from a commitment to Vision Zero that I believe this council has made. I've lived in Southwest Longmont for 26 years, and I love bicycling on the St. Vrain Greenway on the trail. However, riding a bicycle east has become more difficult since the 2013 flood and as the RSVP comes west. The trail is currently closed to access from the east side and from the west side of the city at the Boston Bridge. This has been true for many years. Over time, people have worn a footpath around wire fencing to get around this closure. Apparently, they have also walked through rubble and around broken sidewalk to get under Boston Avenue. There is even a gap in the fence on the east side of the bridge that is only accessible by the ledge of the new levee, 25 feet above the river. This is very unsafe. This ad hoc path exists despite the two alternative routes that the city has put in place to get around the construction. One alternative route takes you on a trail through Isaac Walton Park, and then north across the railroad tracks at Sunset Street and along a neighborhood trail to First and Bowen Streets. From there, bicyclists have to ride in the street. The other route is less safe. It takes people south along Sunset, then across Boston Avenue, then left onto Nelson Road, and left again onto Price Road. That is a lot of contact with vehicles, which we know leads to crashes. The replacement of the Boston Bridge will begin likely in June and will last for 18 months. Shortly after the bridge work begins, work will start on the Isaac Walton area just north of the bridge. The St. Vrain Greenway Trail will be closed from Boston Avenue west to Sunset Street for most of a year, if not more. The Crusher Fine Trail north of the railroad tracks at Sunset will then become inaccessible. There will be continual rolling closures as this work moves west. Everything upstream of Sunset Street to Airport Road will be closed beginning in around spring 2025. The St. Vrain Greenway Trail will then be, in effect, inaccessible to residents on the west side of Longmont for years to come. I have been discussing alternative routes for these phases with Public Works staff, but so far the recommendations all include busy streets. A safer alternative route takes funding, planning, and coordination. Please consider giving bicyclists and other trail users a chance to travel safely across Longmont during the long-term construction work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Hal Morrison.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Hal Morrison. I've lived for over 40 years at 236 Sunset Street. I am one of the registered representatives of the Bond Farm neighborhood group, but no worries, I'm not here tonight to speak on a pending development. Instead, I am here to let you know, as politely as I'm able to, how messed up last week's P&Z meeting was. While I have little comment on the ex parte BC, I strongly object to how the gag order has been imposed. Hastily, without much time for deliberation, and with absolutely no public to be heard. We are all adults. Most of us will act accordingly. Had the city attorney come and talk to the Bond Farm neighbors to explain the implications of ex parte presentations, I know we would have grudgingly accepted this. Instead, the boot came down suddenly and heavily, as if an unwashed mob was about to storm the castle. Without knowledge of ex parte, folks were simply trying to inform decision makers regarding development, conflicts, and incompatibilities they saw coming at their neighborhoods. We know that P&Z and council are empowered to make tough decisions. But all too often, we have seen unwise decisions resulting from time-constrained meetings that don't allow decision makers sufficient opportunities to gain thorough insights. Developers have private meetings with and ongoing unfettered access to staff. But meanwhile, with the public disinvited to be heard, we are prevented from having timely and meaningful opportunities to inform our elected and unelected representatives on the ramification of developments that don't fit existing neighborhoods. Longmont's development process must become more balanced and fairer, not less. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Hal. Morgan Upton.
Hi there, my name is Morgan. I'm at 4719 Luca Drive. I'm here to address the proposal of building a rec center at the Dry Creek Community Park, aka known as the Orange Park or the Sledding Hill to us over there. I didn't even know the park was called Dry Creek, and I've lived there for 20 years until I had to Google it. Just, yeah. And also the fact of realizing that the whole entire area was going to be developed into the rec center and or the landscaping that you guys were looking at there. So the unfortunate part is not only the hill and the walking trails that were a sanctuary for us during the pandemic, but also the grander lesson that we learned whenever the whole entire world shut down is that whenever you leave nature alone, it thrives, beautifully thrives. And I assume you're not aware of the fact that this area is a hunting ground for a few bald eagles, osprey, cranes, and other prey birds, some of which are endangered species, as we know. It would also be interesting to see if the pond has any life and endangered species in it as well, for it's sit since 2008 and longer. That pond has been there forever. So inadvertently, council, by not building on this land, you've actually allowed a thriving ecosystem to just flourish out there. It's amazing. So not only are you allowing native animals to begin to have a habitable hunting ground, you're also allowing natural flora and fauna to have that as well. So I'm going to quote a passage from the 2018 revised Longmont Stability Plan, page 79. People value and desire a connection to the natural world, but pressures from increasing population and land uses that diminish natural features like wildlife corridors and waterways have resulted in environmental degradation and loss of biodiversity and wildlife habitat. Like many cities, Longmont is part of an ecosystem that incorporates the natural and built environment and strives to balance those with community livability. As long as Longmont continues to grow, it will be critical to incorporate a strong land ethic that recognizes the natural environment as a valuable asset to be preserved, protected, and restored in order to sustain both community livability and the vital ecosystem services we rely upon for clean air, water, and soil. How is destroying a thriving ecosystem sustainable? Unfortunately, I'm only allotted 3 minutes, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance Whitaker.
Mayor and Council, my name is Lance Whitaker. I live at 1750 Collier Street. I've been a resident for over 40 years now, and a lot of the trails that you guys are talking about are trails that some of me and my friends carved out with bicycles and our dad's shovels. So you're welcome. When we were making them, we didn't really rely on safety too much. So they have improved, and I like our trail system as it is, and I hope you guys improve on it greatly. There's still a couple out there that are hidden that, well, we won't talk about because my dad's shovel's probably out there somewhere lost. But y'all have a good day, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lance. Gary Hodges?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gary Hodges. I live at 2148 Stewart Street. So I want to speak about a presentation that was here maybe 6 weeks ago. I've been trying to get down here, but things have prevented me. That was the one on the affordable housing that someone from staff, they did. It was a lot of good work. It was a sincere effort. I was interested in hearing it. Throughout that presentation, I kept thinking to myself, wow, it'd be interesting to have economics professor from CU come down and listen to it, and I'd be curious to hear what they had to say, but I feel pretty confident I can sum up their comments, and it would be, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you reduce the number of market value houses by carving others out as affordable, the market rate value houses are going to go up in price. So that's just economic truth. If I can't remember from the presentation, but if the affordable housing thresholds are indexed to market value, their prices are going to rise as well. So the nuts and bolts of it is someone's going to pay through higher fees or whatever, unless Longmont is the only city in the history of mankind that accepts less revenue going forward. You know, it's going to be made up somewhere. Councilman Waters and our city manager touched on that briefly in their comments. It's like, all right, they're going to get there, they're going to get there, and it was like, oh, it didn't quite pan out. Deed restricted. A mention in that conversation or in that presentation was that the average turnover in a house is 6 years, so some ideas were thrown around for, oh, they can own the house after 8 years or 10 or 12, something like that, but it's a different game. If you're living in a house where if you stay in it just long enough, with a big payoff, it's a different game. It's not the 6-year turnover, and it's going to set up perverse incentives. Somebody might get a job, live here, and then they get a job in Castle Rock, and they decide, well, if I commute for the next 4 years, I'm going to get this payoff because I'm going to be able to sell my house for market rate, and it's going to defeat some of the reasons that we were talked about with like trying to get people locally and reducing driving and such. So, well, it may be hard to accept. But I think really the way to address this is just with the market rate policy, careful zoning, etc. But that's going to lead to the greatest mix of housing with the widest ranges of prices and such in there. And so I just, you know, when you're considering this, I just felt like that a major portion of this conversation wasn't addressed. And again, it's just, you know, let's sum it up, that economic cliche we've heard a million times. I mean, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, someone's going to pay, and it'd be nice to figure out who those people are before we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Polly Christensen.
Mayor Peck, members of City Council. My name is Polly Christensen. I live at 410 Judson Street. The Planning and Zoning Commissioners have demanded that City Council immediately amend the City Council rules and procedure to disallow any discussion of any development in Longmont, claiming it as an ex parte communication issue for quasi-judicial decisions. On a vote of 5-1, they decided that the public could no longer discuss any development at a planning and zoning meeting unless it was the actual final approval hearing, which is far too late to have any consideration or discussion. Perhaps we should decommission the commissioners. Now they want City Council to also ban discussions of our community development. So here's what ex parte means according to the state rules of court. Ex parte means direct or indirect communication on the substance of a pending case, which refers to a legal court case, without the knowledge, presence, or consent, of all the parties involved in the matter. All the parties involved in the matter. Quasi-judicial refers to decisions conducted, quote, by administrative executives or officials or organizations that are similar to a court procedure, according to Cornell Education. The Planning and Zoning Board is not a publicly elected board. They are privately appointed more and more by each other, rather than even city council. The difference between legislative decisions and quasi-judicial decisions, which are both what city council does, is that legislative decisions are policy making and quasi-judicial decisions are policy implementation or application. This is a tight, this amendment that is proposed is to ensure due process protection for quasi-judicial matters. Yet the developers and their henchmen, the bankers, lawyers, real estate association, Longmont Economic Development Partnership, of which some developers are members, constantly are talking to city planners, planning and zoning members, and council members to lobby for their development out of the public eye. The neighbors and those affected have only a small window to present their case at a hearing. Public mail notification is spotty to non-existent. Neighborhood meeting notification, likewise. This is not due process. We have working people.
Thank you, Polly. Steve Altschuler.
Good evening, Council. Steve Altschuler, 1555 Taylor Drive in Longmont. First thing I'd like to do is ask y'all to write an ordinance banning smoke from Canadian fires in the city of Longmont. That'd be very much appreciated. All kidding aside, I've talked about this before, but I think crime is a really, really, really big matter everywhere, including Longmont. Throughout our country, anytime there's been a city that has reduced punishment for criminals, whether felonies became misdemeanors or misdemeanors allowed people to just walk free, crime has gone up. Having less people in prison does not reduce crime. We've seen it with the city of Colorado, where Governor Polis's right-hand prosecuting attorney, I believe is his title, has actually come out and said, you know, if someone's only stealing 3 cars and a quarter, we don't need to worry about that. Maybe at the 4th car, we'll put him in jail. All that does is increase more crime. There's a large faction of humanity that what keeps them from committing crime is fear of punishment. There are some people who would be criminals no matter what, but there are people that once they know it's not going to be, they're not going to be punished, they will commit any crime, whether it's going into Target and grabbing clothes or going into a jewelry store or all the smash and grabs you see. But right now, crime is getting worse every week. Catalytic converters are getting stolen time and time again from by the same people. And I've been told that there's nothing the city council can do, but I know there's nothing I can do. And I'm trying to have a ripple effect, push it forward more and more. You guys have contacts at the Denver Capitol building. You can let people know that the citizens are fed up, that they're angry, and I don't know what it takes as far as the courthouses or the prisons or who's responsible, but I think the citizens of Longmont need you guys to step up and push that rock uphill to the next people. Let the people in Denver know how angry people are and not just let this go unspoken about, because when nothing is talked about, everyone in front of me and everyone in Denver just assumes that all of the citizenry agrees with them that it's not a problem. So we need to start letting people know that it is a problem. And in 25 seconds, I would also like to say that 4 or 5 years ago, I was here, and the city council was considering having Longmont be a sanctuary city. You got saved because Polis made the whole state a sanctuary state. But if you could have done it then, I would ask you now to make a proclamation that this is not a sanctuary city and don't allow illegals to come here. They're being fed up to us.
Thank you, Art. Steve. Tom Patterman?
Good evening. I'm Tom Patterman at 1521 Lamplighter Drive. I've been in Longmont for about a good solid 15 years now. And I've seen what this gentleman had to mention, crime just get out of control. It's something that I don't think any of us want to worry about, but we look to you to actually take care of. And we're asking you as citizens, what are you doing? What are you doing to help us out? More so than that, I was very disappointed to hear about the Department of Zoning, about people's public opinions not being heard. I mean, give me a break. You are here to represent us. We chose you. We choose our leaders to represent the people of this wonderful city, which I've called home for 15 years. And tell you the truth, probably not going to be around after this year. And I retire my time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tom. Nikki Petterman.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Petterman. I also live at 1521 Lamplighter Drive. And I'm also very frustrated when I heard that there was a gag order being put on the public. How is that is that our First Amendment is here for us to have a public forum, for you to listen to us. Like Tom mentioned earlier, and people before you, we voted you in to represent our personal interest. When I hear that a town, a Bond Farm, coming to you and saying, begging you, don't build, you vote 5-0? Where's the personal representation? Now we're hearing that you want to put a gag order on us, another vote 5-1. Where's the representation? It's so disheartening to live in America and hear people like you that we trusted to tell us we don't want to hear from you. We're going to give you to the very last meeting to have anything to say. I just don't understand how you think that's right, how you sleep at night knowing that the personal interests of this town are being let down constantly. The other woman about building. Every time I drive down 17th, down Hover, I look around, buildings. Who's standing up for the ground that is Longmont, the ground that is Colorado, for the resources here, the animals here? Who's doing that? I don't believe it's you. And that's very, very sad. And I would love to know what you guys do to plan on changing that and getting our trust back into you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Strider.
Greetings, Strider Benston, 951 17th. I didn't know about the P&Z gag thing, and I tend to agree with what I've heard tonight. There's so much going on in this country and this culture right now, and one of it is the gun culture thing. It's getting entirely out of hand. One of the recent books called Gunfight by Ryan Busey about how they did that and how the NRA basically took over the country with bribes, and then even though they're falling down, the steamroller got moving. But it's all connected. The war against women, the war against education, the war against history, the war against the environment and nature, it's all the same game. Every right-wing movement in history has made an alliance with the super rulers, ruling class, and has been the foot soldiers for the ultra-rich to crush the real working class and people who actually do anything. And in this country especially, it's always been based on race. Racism is the core of it. And the Trump tax cut of $3 trillion for the ultra-rich, and now they're saying, oh, we have a deficit, and now we have to steal Medicare and steal all the environmental programs and everything that might help the actual American people. Oh, we got to take that back. And we're going to threaten to collapse the entire economy unless you roll over and play dead for us. The gun culture thing, the number one cause of death of children in this country now is guns. And their answer, oh, make more guns, have everybody carry guns. And the stochastic terrorism, for many years, the mass murders were 96% white men between age 15 and 50 who did all the killings. Now they got a few other groups, a few people do some mass killings, so now they can blame it on them. The point is threatening and destroying democracy. We have to rebuild it. And one of the people that helped us create democracy, Harry Belafonte, a good friend of mine, one of the greatest people this country ever produced. And look into We Are the World. He created that and many other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider.
Mayor, we also have Audrey Dunn that
Okay. Audrey?
would like to speak. Thank you.
It's your choice.
Good evening. Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
I'm here tonight. I don't really know where to start.
Audrey, do you mind?
There are still issues with the Sweets apartment community. 2,000 Sunset Way at the Sweets.
Thank you.
There are still issues with the Sweets apartment community. And I hate to say it, but nothing is being done for our safety when it comes to drugs. There are still drugs in that community. I can't be exposed to that, but I have nowhere else to go because nothing's affordable in Longmont unless more 6 and 8 housing opens up. My late father was a Marine. His Marine base is on the West Coast. Contaminated groundwater just like Camp Lejeune. That's why I'm short. I was exposed to that because both of my parents were exposed to that contaminated groundwater. My father, whether you believe it or not, was 6 feet tall. I'm 4'4". I cannot be exposed to the contaminants in that apartment. Weed, marijuana, I know is legal, but they don't realize the people who do it don't realize the people around them can't be exposed to it because it bothers them. I stop breathing when I smell weed. I do. I have to get out of there right away, get away from that situation. Meth, I smelled it a few times, my eyes water. My nose is starting to now. What is going on? There used to be signs on the each end of the driveway before Miss Lawson took over. that this is a crime-free, drug-free community. Those signs were taken down and replaced with parking signs. If somebody does not have a parking permit, they would be told to lay it down as expense. I can understand that, but the other signs were taken down. Why? I'm seeing crime go up more and more every day. People are smoking. I don't care what it is. Smoking is smoking. They're supposed to smoke 25 feet away from the building, and they're not. What are we going to do about this to solve the issues? Because I can't be exposed to that stuff anymore because of my own health. It's really very disappointing. This Lawson in this county is not doing their job, period. They say they are, but I know they're not. They lie. A few years ago, the sprinkler system in the building broke, water pipe broke. It flooded me out of my apartment unit.
Thank you, Audrey.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know I
No,
talked too much.
No, you're fine. Thank you very much. Seeing no one else on the list, we're going to close first public invited to be heard. And I would like to say that anyone who is interested in the amendment to our rules of procedure, please stay or tune in online to hear the discussion. We are now at our consent agenda. Dawn, would you mind reading the ordinance and the consent agenda into the record?
Absolutely. 9A is Resolution 2023-50, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Colorado Water Conservation Board for grant funding for updating the Water Efficiency Master Plan. 9B is Resolution 2023-51, a resolution of the Longmont City Council to approve a 6-month contract with the Humane Society for Longmont Department of Public Safety Animal Control. 9C is Resolution 2023-52, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and the Colorado Department of Transportation for state funding for bike and pedestrian improvements at Main Street and 21st Avenue. 9D is Resolution 2023-53, a resolution of the Longmont City Council to approve the Colorado Communities for Climate Action Proposed 2023 Policy Statement. 9E is Resolution 2023-54, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Transportation for maintenance of traffic signals, traffic stencil markings, traffic long line markings, and traffic control device. 9F is amend City Council Rules of Procedure to ensure due process protections for quasi-judicial matters, and 9G is approved 2 capital improvement program amendments. And Mayor, staff would like to pull 9F.
Okay, great, thank you. Can I have a motion to move the consent agenda? Minus 9F? I'm sorry. Councilman Martin turned on her light.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I move the consent agenda except for 9F.
Great. So the consent agenda minus 9F has been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor McCoy. Let's vote. And that carries unanimously. We're now on ordinance on second reading and public hearings on any matter. 10A is 2023-18. A bill for an ordinance amending section 14.32.150 of the Longmont Municipal Code on electric community investment fees. Are there any questions from council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I would like to open the public comment area for ordinance 2023-18. Is there anyone that would like to comment on this? Is that Aaron? Hello, Aaron.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, members of the Longmont City Council, Aaron Fosdick, President and CEO of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership, 1925 Pike Road. I understand that you're considering changes to ECIF and other system development fees. I know this is something that council talked about last year. For those of you that I didn't have the pleasure of meeting last time I was here, I'm about 5 weeks in, so I did miss those hearings, but I wanted to provide some feedback from the LEDP, as I know these changes will be significant for some in our community. I know this will also result in an updated methodology that will help address, and it will help address the increasing costs that all businesses are facing, so we recognize that. I also understand that these changes are going to be implemented over 3 years, so it's a phased approach, which is great. At the LEDP, as you know, we worked with investors, local businesses, as well as developers to bring jobs and opportunities to our community. And as you know, we're committed to a foundation that's built on growth, prosperity, and inclusion. And so while we understand that costs are increasing, as we all understand at this point, and that the fee updates are inevitable, I did want to share some concerns about this increase. Really the scope of the increase and their impact on Longmont's ability to remain competitive. Some of you know, and especially those of you who have been part of our work at the EDP, understand that we are in a great position to recruit and retain amazing companies here, and part of that is because of our competitive fee structure. We do tout Longmont's competitive costs, especially as they relate to electric fees and other utilities. And so these increases, which in some cases represent a doubling or even tripling of fees, is concerning to us because it will potentially have an impact on our business recruitment and retention, because this will also impact existing businesses that are looking to upgrade. It's my understanding that there wasn't a lot of outreach done, and so while I understand this is on second reading, I'm certainly not expecting that council's not going to act on this tonight, and we do recognize that these increases are needed. My ask to council and to city staff would be that for future fee increases or code changes and things that we could potentially work proactively together so that we can have business interests at the table. I know in the meeting where you provided direction to staff in November, a lot of focus was on how this would impact residential development, as it should be. I know housing, particularly affordable and attainable housing, is a main priority for our community, as it is for LEDP. But we certainly don't want to dismiss the impacts that this will have on our employers and folks that are providing primary jobs. So my ask would be that in the future you consider outreach with economic partners such as Longmont, LADP, others, and we would be happy to help facilitate that. Thank you for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you, Erin. So, having listened to her, I know that council has an opportunity to weigh in, but do you want to weigh in at this point also? Really short, so Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to ask.
Nope.
I'm not.
No.
I would like to say then that I do not think that while this increase is small, that Longmont, in fact, Longmont's utility prices remain exceptionally competitive. We did the math, and the city has electrification goals that require these changes. So I can't change my vote based on, the fact that it was perhaps a surprise.
Okay, thank you. So, seeing no one else from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion on 2023-18. So 2023-18 was made by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Martin. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. So 10B is ordinance 2023-19, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 14, Section 14.24.050 on storm drainage fees. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I'll open up 2023-19 to the public Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this ordinance? Seeing none, I would like to ask for a vote on 2023-19. So ordinance 2023-19 has been moved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. 10C is ordinance 2023-22, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023. Are there any questions from council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing on ordinance 2023-22. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this ordinance? Mr. Art Schuler?
It's not specifically about this ordinance, but in general, and I could be coming in after the barn door is closed, I don't really know. But on all three of these, and probably a lot of the others, since I'm not always here every week and I haven't heard all the details, and I don't know how much is said out loud to citizens or how much is done behind closed doors. But even things like the first one with the electric investment fees, it would be nice if these highlights would say how much the fees were or how much the increase was. Mrs. Martin, you said it's a nominal fee. I thought that's what you said. I'm sorry. And the lady back here said it was a great big fee. You know. So when these things are filled out for people to read, it'd be really nice if it said it's a 20% fee or 120% fee or whatever. But as these things are written right here, without my hearing previous conversations, I don't know squat. So there's nothing for me to come up and really talk about. So I'm just saying, I wish there was more information here that we could read before you guys end up doing the voting.
So we don't usually comment, but I'm going to that you can find it online during the meeting in the council communication. So if you go online to the meetings, you can click on it and then click on the attachments, and it has the comments, it has everything there. But we did have presentations, as this is the second reading, from the water department, the electric department, and nothing is done behind closed doors.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying it'd be nice if, as I walk in and read this, if I had a little more information so I would know what everyone's voting on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Seeing no one else from the public, I would like to close public invited to be heard. Can I have, yes, a motion? That would be good.
Was it 10C?
Yes, 2023-22. All right, so ordinance 2023-22 was moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Let's vote. And that carries unanimously. So now we're on to items removed from the consent agenda, and this was removed by staff. It is 9F to amend City Council Rules of Procedure to ensure due process protections for quasi-judicial matters. I'll turn it over to staff.
Mayor and council, could we take a 5-minute break before we head into this one?
Yes. 5-minute break. Thank you. We are back. So I will turn this over to staff on 9F.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. I'll give a brief presentation on item 9G, the city staff proposal to amend council rules of procedure to ensure due process protections for quasi-judicial matters. The title is very dense, but really explains what the purpose is here. When council acts on certain land use applications, they are considered quasi-judicial matters. These would be, say, rezonings or concept plan amendments. That's when there are legally protected interests at play, applying criteria from the code, pre-existing criteria, to a set of facts, the development application. Because there are legally protected interests at stake here, there are due process protections required by the Constitution to ensure a fair and impartial hearing process. The hallmarks of due process in this type of application are a notice hearing, an opportunity to be heard, to present evidence at the hearing, and to make argument at that hearing, and then for an impartial decision maker to apply those facts to the pre-existing criteria to reach a decision. The corollary to the requirement that your decision be based on evidence presented at a hearing is what we've heard about a lot today, is ex parte communications. It does come from the judicial process. That means without the other party. And so in practice, that means outside the formal hearing process, city council should not be talking to any party. It applies equally to all the stakeholders, whether they be the neighbors, the developer, the media, public, any other interested parties. And when I see or am aware that land use application is pending, I will often send out an email to council advising them to not engage in ex parte communications. So these are the sort of ground rules for due process in ensuring a fair and impartial hearing. And when council is acting in this capacity, you need to sort of act like judges. If you notice for trials pending before judges, the judges are not talking to other parties, they are not talking to the media. They have the parties present evidence at trial, and the judge makes their decision based on that trial evidence. That is the same sort of parallel that's going on here in these types of land use applications. There are a couple other things I'd like to address that I heard in public invited to be heard, and then I'll open this up to questions. So the city attorney's office is the body that proposed this bylaw change for Planning and Zoning Commission. We did this because there was sustained, organized, intentional ex parte communication going on at the Planning and Zoning Commission on a pending development application. We first became aware of the intent for these ex parte communications to continue at the April Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and we acted and proposed the bylaw change at the May meeting. City staff, planning staff has put many hours into public outreach and engagement. We talked to the neighbors on this pending development application, informed them about our concern with their presentations at the public invited to be heard portion of planning and zoning. We asked them not to do that. We asked them to bring their comments to the public hearing or submit written comments for inclusion in the public record that will come before PZ when the item is on their agenda. Unfortunately, we thought that the ex parte communications were going to continue, and it is the government's obligation to provide a fair hearing under the due process requirements. And that is why the city attorney's office proposed the PZ bylaw change and why we're before council tonight proposing a similar change to the city council rules of procedure. And then just to stress that the ex parte communication applies equally to all interested parties. We do not want any stakeholder to try to influence your decision before that hearing on the matter, and we think that comments at public invited to be heard are intended to do just that. And as I explained, due process protections require that city council make its decision based on evidence presented at the hearing. And that's what I always advise our quasi-judicial decision makers to do. And that's pretty much the extent of my comments, and I'm happy to take questions.
Councilor Martin, before I call on you, I would like to ask a question of the city attorney. Is that all right with you? Okay, thank you. So just for clarification, a quasi-judicial matter is always a legal matter. So when we are talking about coming to city council on a legal matter, is that, and a group of residents wanting to present their side, is that only at the appeals process? Or is that at any time there is anything going on that is about a development? Because this is a very gray area for me to understand.
So Mayor and Council, there are a number of questions in your question. So just procedurally, sometimes City Council is the decision maker and sometimes Planning and Zoning is the decision maker. If Planning and Zoning is the decision maker, they can be appealed to City Council, in which case City Council would sit at an as an appellate body. The nature of the matter doesn't change. If it's quasi-judicial at P&Z, it would be quasi-judicial on appeal to City Council. Land use applications are divided into two broad categories. There are quasi-judicial matters where City Council would be applying pre-existing criteria to a set of facts, a development application, sort of retroactively. You have already set the policy. This is to be distinguished from legislative matters. Legislative matters, the classic one is annexation, or say comp plan type amendments where you're doing a broad swath of properties, not a single property. Those are meant to be prospective policy setting. In legislative matters, there is not the due process protections there because it's within the City Council's discretion. In those cases, public is welcome to come and speak to you on public invited to be heard because it is about setting prospective policy for broad areas within the city. In a comp plan amendment or in an annexation, it is just a discretionary act by legislative act for City Council to agree or not agree to bring property into municipal boundaries.
So one more. Would it be fair to say then that when a public comment setting is set up so that the developer can talk to the residents, et cetera, but it hasn't gone to public planning and zoning yet, at that point, it is more than fine for the public to come here and talk to us about what they heard, what they've seen, et cetera. But once it goes to planning and zoning, at that point, does it become quasi-judicial at that point?
It becomes a quasi-judicial when there's a complete application submitted to the city.
Okay.
And then, that is the point after which the due process protections would fall into place and the prohibition against ex parte communications would be implemented. And I do understand sometimes it's difficult to know when that application has been submitted. And when I hear matters come up, I check with planning staff to see if there's a completed, accepted development application and where it is in the process and what type it is to make the determination whether it's legislative or quasi-judicial and whether or not it's a complete application and therefore, in the pipeline and therefore triggering due process.
Okay, Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I also have several questions, Mayor Peck.
Good.
The first one is more of a comment, which is that sometimes there is a lag in updating the artifacts that allow any user of the website to know whether there is a completed application and the quasi-judicial portion of considering a certain project has begun. So it would be really, really helpful if those updates were made more promptly so that we can be in the know. Second,
And thank you, Council Martin. I think you're talking about the development log that's on the city's
I'm
website.
talking about the development
Yeah.
log, and I'm also talking about what's behind the website, because I'm not the only person in the city that has that's not on the planning staff that has an account and can log in and see
Right, the
what's going
development
on in
log
Missoula.
identifies pending applications, identifies what type they are, and I think a small description of what the project is.
Yes, and the last time I looked at it, it wasn't, in fact, there were at least 2 projects that you could see on the streets that were not represented, so that needs to be updated faster. The other question that I have is if we could talk a little more about the distinction between speaking on policy to the council and speaking specifically on a judicial matter. So if the residents of a certain neighborhood had opinions about whether the street design was adequate for expected development that had not been, wasn't currently going on, or even as far as they could tell in the works, they would be perfectly free to express their opinions about what the city comprehensive plan for their neighborhood, for the infrastructure for their neighborhood, needed to change in order to avert disaster in their eyes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was thinking about recent examples. I think it was commercial building design standards came before council recently, and Glenn presented on those. Those are sort of policy matters, prospective, not affecting any single development application. Those would be policy-based, making policy regards to what kind of flexibility and what kind of design standards are required for future commercial developments. I think that's an example that comes to mind about policy versus, a specific land use application developing a specific parcel of land. I don't know if that's what you're thinking about.
Well, no, because I've never heard of a citizen who really cared very much about commercial building design, but they care a lot about parking, and they care a lot about traffic through residential neighborhoods, and they're perfectly aware, even though there's not an application in the pipeline, where the developable infill properties and annexable properties are in their city. So they can, in fact, be forming opinions that can be considered as policy expressions to council at any time.
That sounds, if they're talking in general about development in the city, the affordable housing crisis, about Vision Zero.
No, more specific than that, about a specific parcel. It's just not under development right now, that there's no
Correct.
application pending.
I said that the quasi-judicial due process protections are triggered by the submittal and acceptance of a development application.
That's right. I just wanted that to be really clear, because that means that there is a long period of time when the public is free to talk as much as they want to.
Yes.
Councillor McQuarrie.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Well, I'm a little concerned about this because, I don't want to have the chilling effect on our members of our public and feeling like somehow, as we heard tonight, that they're feeling, with the few people that were out here, that that somehow by doing this, we would be infringing on their First Amendment rights, and certainly we don't want to step into that situation too deep. So the thing that I'm kind of concerned about is because as council members, people say, hey, would you like to have coffee? And this could be developers, and or it can be members of the public, and so you go and talk to them. I think it's kind of on us. We don't necessarily, I'm not exactly certain that we need this. I think it's on us to say, hey, if this is in the process here and we're not quite certain where it's at, we maybe need to not have too specific a conversation about that. I think that's more on an education part on our side, making sure that we're not doing that, and maybe on planning and zoning. I think that somehow along the line there was a perception that whether they didn't understand it or whatever, that in the Bond Farm situation that kind of brought this to the surface, that they were able to, have kind of a rolling public invited to be heard sort of presentation sort of thing. And I think at that point, we might have to remind them that, of this, but do you really, I mean, you wouldn't write this if you didn't believe in this, but what I'm saying, do we as a community want us to have such strict policies and rigid approaches to how we communicate with the public, or even with even applicants? Maybe want to hear what they have to say. And many of us were at a ribbon cutting just this past week for the tiny veterans home community project. And something, this came, we got your email afterwards, and I started thinking about how they had identified, a former mayor and a former council member, and how intricate they were into making sure that this got through the system. Were they, I'm sure those individuals who served on council at that time were aware of, this ex parte quasi-judicial situation. I don't know what their conversation with the developer, what they look like, but we want to make sure that, if they gave advice, it's one thing. If they gave opinion, maybe it's another thing. But maybe they, if they were such an intricate part, maybe they should have stepped back, because we wouldn't want it to be seen as we were stepping into a quasi-judicial issue. I'm just kind of hesitant to have any sort of issues around the First Amendment and squashing that with people. Thank you. And thank you for your time, Eugene. I know you're always trying to keep us out of trouble, so appreciate it.
Did you want to?
I could respond to a couple things I heard. One, I do think that council needs to be educated on this issue. I know through the years, I've gotten calls from council members, hey, I've been invited to coffee with, X person. Do you see any concern with that? And if it's about a particular development, I can call over to planning staff, see where they are, see whether it's submitted or not. Council has been aware. I think on the Veterans Community Project and the Mountain Brook development, there was a long runway to that before the development application was submitted. And so before a development application is submitted, you're free to have conversations. Once that development application has been submitted, then if there are quasi-judicial aspects to that development application, then we have due process and ex parte rules are in place.
Okay. Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Just to clarify, a lot of this has to do with timing.
It's all about
post
timing.
application. So, as you're listening, as I'm listening, I just want to say, I would expect for somebody to push that information to me. I would say to you and to Glenn, don't put me in the position of chasing that information down. I got enough to worry about. Push that information to me. If there's a threshold or there's an application that's been submitted. Now I think it's on you guys to keep me informed, and then I'll do my job, right? To keep myself out of those conversations. But I'm not gonna take myself out of opportunities to learn prior to an application being submitted, like the Veterans Community Project as an example. There were tons of conversations that had nothing to do with Mountain Brook in particular or the specifics of that project. That had everything to do with getting to know people and what problems we're trying to solve and how this is a solution. Just, you know, as a first observation. Eugene, I heard some language here tonight that I'm going to address in my comments. But first, would you just address the concept of gagging people? Because I've heard it 2 or 3 times tonight. That somehow P&Z or you, or if we were to vote on this, the intent is to gag people, somehow to deny somebody of their First Amendment rights. Would you speak to that?
So Council Member Waters, I can speak to it, and I was going to add on to your timing. Not only is there pre and post application, it's about the timing of your input. And under the due process fair hearing, the timing is at the hearing, when it's on an agenda before the decision maker, where you present your evidence. And then, you know, the other avenue for your input is we welcome written comments at any time. Council makes its decision based on evidence presented at the hearing. The staff will prepare a staff report, and it will collect community input and provide that in your agenda item, so that information is before council when they're making the decision at the time of the hearing. And that's just the way that the due process protections under the Constitution have played out in this aspect. Due process has many facets, but for these land development applications, it's all focusing it into that hearing and that agenda.
So it's not a gag order?
I would not characterize that as a gag order. I think you have an opportunity at the hearing, and you have an opportunity to submit written comments, and you have an opportunity before the application is submitted.
Unfretted. I mean, prior to an application, it's an open forum, yeah.
Yes.
I heard tonight, bankers, realtors, home builders, and developers branded or labeled as henchmen. I just want to go on record. I appreciate we can paint with real broad brushes, but we have bankers, developers, realtors, and home builders who are contributing in substantial ways to this community. I just want to say I appreciate the fact that the responsible ones, and most of them are helping us accomplish our housing objectives and our economic development objectives, and we wouldn't get them accomplished without some of the very people who have been branded or labeled tonight as quote-unquote henchmen. I also want to say to members of planning and zoning who volunteer their time, like other boards and commission members, we're going to interview on June 10th, board and commission applicants. As I recall, we were disappointed this year that we didn't have more applicants for board and commission positions, unlike previous years. And that one of the quickest ways, or maybe the most certain ways, to discourage people from continuing to apply to serve as volunteers in the community is to come to a public meeting and label them as the problem, or as the enemy, or as we ought to decommission them because we don't value their contributions. I want to say to planning and zoning, I don't agree with everything they've decided. I don't agree with every person on planning and zoning, but I do appreciate the fact that the citizens of Longmont are willing to give up their time at no compensation and serve, put in the hours, as many hours as we do, I think, on planning and zoning and other of our boards and commissions.
So, I have a question about B, where the amendment for the rules of procedure is in some of the way. So it's the first sentence, but it's after the process protections. The second line, City Council may prohibit public statements on upcoming matters where council may hold a quasi-judicial hearing. That sounds like we can squash it, or we can let the conversation go. If it is upcoming matter where there may hold a quasi-judicial hearing, but we don't know if an application has been submitted, then I don't think that we have the right to stop conversation from the public. I mean, we may hold because we think there might be I think that is just very vague.
So Mayor and Council, a couple thoughts on that, and I've had conversations with staff on this. We do, you know, it is staff's responsibility to know what development applications are in that are quasi-judicial matters and to bring those to the attention of City Council in this setting. And so that's on us. You, like you said, you may not know that this is a quasi-judicial application that has been submitted. So rest assured that's on us. There's also different types of comments, right? If they're real general comments about, I don't know, traffic is pretty widespread, or if it's just one person here or there, maybe we don't try to impose this new proposed rule. But when it's sustained, intentional, organized, formal presentations, that's when I think we are most at risk at not meeting our obligation to provide a fair hearing on these matters. So it was intentionally drafted to create some discretion to be able to address the different circumstances that come up.
Okay. I would appreciate it in our council comm, or perhaps on first reading, if there would be a statement saying this application has been submitted, so that when the public goes out to the agenda portal, they will see that. So if we stop them and say, I'm sorry, the application for this development has already been, we can no longer discuss it in detail, if you have and then to mention. Would that be possible? Because it does give the impression, I know that communication to the public is very, very difficult. We can never, ever meet everyone's desire to have one-on-one with us to explain everything. Would that be possible, just to make it clear, especially to all of us who sometimes miss that?
Mayor and Council, so the answer is yes. I was going to say great minds think alike. We're already in conversations with staff to put a quasi-judicial identifier on notices for the development application. So when our neighborhood meetings or other hearing notices go out, they will identify this issue and say, please come to the hearing and present your comments, but please avoid public invited to be heard for these reasons.
I think that would be very, very helpful. Councilor McCoy?
Oh, that was mine. That was mine. Don't.
Oh, Susan, are you done?
Yeah, no, I haven't started yet.
Go. I can't see everybody.
No, it's all right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eugene. You answered a lot of my concerns and questions. I was first made aware of the decision, the P&Z decision at NGLA, and I did not have the background to understand until I popped up the agenda items and read the change to language. And, you know, my biggest concern was being that stifling of First Amendment rights. And, you know, we have more opportunity to hear, you know, through presentation or through our communications to hear, you know, about the actual development, and not so much from the impacted residents. So, you know, so my first inkling was, you know, I didn't like this. I wasn't so sure. So you did clarify a lot of issues. The only thing, you know, it's hard for people to come out. So they're coming out with the intent to speak on a topic. They make it all the way over here only to learn that they're not going to be heard. So, you know, I do have concern about that. If there is a way that we can rectify this, even if it is reframing some of the language or having that detailed explanation ahead of time, you know, as it comes forward on second reading, if this passes tonight, just have to really make sure that people understand. And I know it's really hard. I've done a lot of organizing. I've organized a couple of mental health events, and people. I've handed flyers. I've put stuff, made calls, and oh, that's tonight. Like it's very hard. I understand. We're all trying to keep up with things. So, but if we can make every effort in our power to make sure this clearly gets out to the people who need to hear this, I would appreciate it.
So like I said, we are talking at the staff level. We did do community engagement and outreach on development applications currently pending. We hope that revising our language on the required land use notices will help reach the target population. And we can talk with other members of staff on how best to get that word out. Because I agree, nobody wants to schlep down to a meeting and then be told no. And that's not a good use of anybody's time.
I want to apologize to council. I did not scroll down on this list, which is getting quite large, before calling on it. So, Councilor Martin.
Yeah, I'm trying, this is my second time at the mic, so should Councilmember Rodriguez speak first?
Just go fast.
Okay. I really had just a third point, which is that the nature of ex parte communications in quasi-judicial matters has always been a rule in force. So these amendments to both sets of rules of procedure are in fact there not to change the rules about anything. They're just to warn people that it's true, because a few people didn't, well, actually most people didn't know about it. Is that correct?
Excellent point, Councilmember Martin. Like I said, since I've been here for 14 years, I always provide these ex parte warnings to my clients, City Council, Planning and Zoning when necessary. And these are formalizing for transparency and for education into the rules of procedure, and to address current conditions that I have not seen previously here, where an amendment to the rules of procedure like this was what I deemed necessary. And I think once there is a level of education, I think that this issue will not be an issue for us. If we get the word out, people understand why. It's not that we're stifling. We are balancing First Amendment with due process, and that we invite your comments in written form, or please come down and testify at the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. So the Planning and Zoning voted on a bylaw change, and this is a change to rules and procedure being proposed. What about for meetings that are not dictated by our rules and procedures, such as next week's open forum or coffee with council? Because that technically would still violate ex parte communication.
It would. I think it's up to the moderator, or I don't know if the context has a chair to be aware. And it's a two-way street too. We can make the rules, but people, if they understand it, they need to respect them too.
Sure. All right. Well, I just know how some coffees with council have gone, and maybe a little unruly. So a point that maybe wasn't spoken a lot about here so far, but was kind of addressed at length at the Planning and Zoning Commission, because I'm the liaison, so I had to sit through that discussion, was kind of the so what. Is if we voted against this rule change and allowed for this to happen, what's the so what? And I believe that the city would become, there would be some legal exposure to the city should we vote against this and continue to allow, say a rolling presentation on a matter. In which case, that obviously comes with financial implications for legal defense in the case of the city if we were to be sued. And I think one of the big responsibilities of city council is stewardship of the taxpayers' money. And people may not agree with what we do and what we choose to spend on, but frivolous lawsuits, I think, unequivocally, people would be against as far as the use of their tax dollars is concerned. And so I think that's one thing that, council members should definitely consider when considering this particular issue, is that I know oftentimes when we are behind closed doors talking about legal positions, that we oftentimes will ask what's going to kind of be the cost to take this to trial, and how long is that process, and what does that look like? And so if we continue to allow this without the rule change and without the education to the public and things like that, that could potentially be a lot of money that we could have used in other places for better things than just simply changing this rule and educating the public that this is a legal issue. It's not some sort of shady, the council doesn't want to hear your opinion issue. And so that's just kind of my opinion as far as some other things to consider when we're looking at this as we vote tonight. So thank you.
Well said, Mayor Pro Tem, and it would be a violation of due process claim under the Constitution.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Eugene, is the language here in that you have here for council almost identical, except for mentioning council as the planning and zoning language?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the thing here, and I hear exactly what Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez is saying, but the thing that I have here is, I think it's the second sentence, the chair has the discretion to direct the speaker. And we know that sometimes the hour gets late and things like that, and somebody just doesn't catch it. Now we're in violation because they didn't stop the speaker. They didn't use that discretion that we're talking about here. And that concerns me of the sort of liability. People do, to Councilmember Waters' point, people serving here trying to do the right thing by the community and serving on our boards and commissions, and they're just, average people out there trying to do what's right by their community and be involved, and they miss it, and they don't catch that element of how they should apply that in a discretionary sort of way. How do we avoid that?
So Mayor and Council, I don't want to find out, but there is a threshold for there to be a due process violation. I think one random comment, probably not. If we missed it late hour, and then at the other extreme is this organized, intentional, sustained presentations. And there's probably a lot of gray in between. We all try to do our best. This will be a due item on our radar for Glenn and myself. And with regard to the chair's discretion, she can consult with staff. She can ask me, or I could say, hey, why don't we take a time out here and Glenn can do his thing, I can do my thing, and we can come up with a staff recommendation. So we didn't want to let perfect get in the way of progress, and I think this is timely to get it to PZ and then council right on the heels, and maybe we'll learn things and tweak the language in the future, but for now I think this is the right starting point given the circumstances we've seen.
All right, thank you.
So the other thing that I want to say to the public that is watching either live stream or in here is that planning and zoning has to follow our codes and zoning for the city. So even if I personally don't like something that's going in, if it follows codes, if it follows zoning, then it's okay to build it. If we do not allow it, even though the codes and zoning say we can, we're also in a big pile of trouble because we're not following our own rules. those codes and zoning can only be changed if the city council says we need to look at this. And it's not going to be after an application has been filed. It's going to be probably whenever we look at our codes and zoning and look back and see how they've worked. Is this working for our city? Is it not? So it doesn't sound, it may sound like we don't care, but we do have processes in this city, and we have to follow them.
Mayor, I think that's exactly right. Quasi-judicial is applying pre-existing criteria to the facts of the application, and that is the role of the PZ. And they're very good at it. I advised PZ for the last year and a half, and they take their job very seriously. They're very thorough, and discuss all of these points with a different criteria and are they met or not. And I agree that you meet our code, then you would have the right to develop.
So, knowing that, let's see, we have Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peg. Just a process question real quickly. I think Councilmember Hidalgo Ferring made reference to first reading and second reading. This is on the consent agenda. This is neither an ordinance nor a resolution.
Right. I can't remember exactly which council rule of procedure it says it, but to amend the council rules of procedure, you introduce it at one meeting and then
So this
have
would be a
second.
zero reading. It would come back
Yeah.
as an ordinance?
No.
No.
It's kind of two readings to amend the council rules of procedure.
So we would come back with
The same thing, just for second consideration.
as a consent agenda as opposed to a hearing?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Which gives the public time to know that it's on the agenda as well, and they can have a public hearing on it. To amend,
Yes,
not to discuss the development.
correct.
Okay, great. So, staff pulled this. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve 9F? Councilwoman Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Yes, I believe the appropriate motion is to instruct the staff to continue and bring it back as a resolution.
That's the motion.
Yes, I so move.
Well, that's not a, yeah, it's not a,
The improve the language, the language?
just to approve the amendment. We're not directing staff to do anything tonight.
Put
Correct.
it on the next agenda.
It would come back on second reading and public hearing on the next agenda. This is the
Yes.
first reading.
Right,
Mayor
okay.
and council, I was a little imprecise with my language. I can read you the rule. Any amendment to the rules of procedure shall be submitted in writing at a regular session and shall be acted upon no sooner than at the next meeting. So it's really a two reading thing, but here we are submitting and then you will act next time if you say
Right,
move
and,
forward.
yeah.
I think
And
it's
I
a-
actually think in the language you set out, you said the council decides whether to proceed with this language.
I actually said to approve the amendment, which
Yeah.
is
Okay.
incorrect. It's being submitted now to be acted on at the next regular session.
Well, anyway, I move that.
Thank you.
All right, so 9F, it was 9F, wasn't it, not 9G? That's what I thought. Okay, so 9F was moved by Councilor Martin and seconded by Councilor Waters. Let's vote. I am. Come on, mousy. There we go. That carries unanimously. Thank you. This is a really tough discussion. And it's going to take a lot of education to make it understood. So we're now at, well, where are we on this agenda? We're at general business. Oh, this is another fun one. So I need I move that we recess as the Longmont City Council. Oops. Convene as the Longmont Housing Authority. So that's seconded by Councilor McCoy, let's vote. Let's vote. Oh, there we go. We all voted. So that passes unanimously. So item A on Longmont Housing Authority is the LHA special meeting item, resolution LHA 2023-19, to approve Zinnia Property Management Agreement. Do we have any presentations on this?
One briefly, is this working?
It is.
Okay, because I'm seeing a different light color on my handheld. One of the things, we actually wanted to get this on the meeting agenda last week, but we are in the throes of closing right now on this project, and this document wasn't ready, and we actually need it ready for tomorrow, so it worked out that we could place this as a special meeting as part of this city council meeting. And then I just wanted you all to know that. Molly's gonna talk about this item, and then we had another item come up yesterday that I wanna talk to you all about as well.
Commissioners and board chair, thanks for listening to this tonight. I'm Molly O'Donnell, housing director for the city. So this item is really unique for us. We worked very hard to put it together because this is the first time that the Housing Authority has entered into a third-party property management agreement with an external affordable housing provider. And this is a model that we are looking to use in the future. And so a lot of work has gone into making sure that we thought down the road 15, 20 years to try and anticipate everything that we would need to make sure that we have the Housing Authority in a good position in this partnership. So that everything from staffing levels and cost splits and everything in between are considered in this management agreement with the Housing Authority and the partnership for the Zinnia property, which is Zinnia LLP, also including Element Properties as the developer. If there's any questions, I can field those.
I'm not seeing any. Can I have a motion to approve? Councilor Martin.
I'm sorry, but I had to formulate my question carefully. I wanted to say that it was appropriate. I thought that we had a differently abled member of the suites, resident of the suites here speaking to the public, and that the Zinnia project extends our permanently supportive housing beyond what's available in the suites, and that it is a special project in that it includes trauma-informed design. I'm wondering whether this also is going to make it easier to enforce the kinds of behavior that this resident was feeling threatened by. Because, you know, we don't have a good answer for her. We can be very strict about catching people committing crimes and contaminating the premises of the suites, but it's hard to catch them ahead of time. So do you have anything to say to that? Are we going to be able to do better with this building?
I think one of the things that really comes into play is, sorry, I had to switch boxes, so I need to adjust this one. We've actually been pretty active in terms of managing the, we've been pretty active in managing many of the issues that were brought up at the suites.
I know.
Just kind of wanting to get that out. Unfortunately, we've had a fair number of evictions. I think as we look at this project and bringing more people to the site, I think it does increase our ability to, you know, the more eyes that you have in a property, the easier it is to manage that. Part of what we're working on with this project is also including cameras at the location so that we can monitor what's occurring, you know, around the property and deal with these issues. And so, yeah, I think the simple answer is yes. I think anytime you're dealing with this, and staff just went through fair housing training, and things just, continue to move, and we have to accommodate that. You all may remember we talked about a 3-day if we have an issue and a 10-day if we have an issue. We were just informed that the 10-day no longer exists based on the new fair housing laws. And so in some ways it's getting harder, but we have to comply with the relevant laws related to how we manage properties. But I can say at the suites that the call volume from a couple of years ago, it wasn't uncommon for us to see 10 to 20 calls a week for service. We're now hovering in 0 to 5. It does pick up occasionally, but we have seen operationally a significant difference in the calls for service.
Thank you. Then I will move approval of this resolution.
So the resolution's been approved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo. No, I'm sorry. Let me say that over. Has been approved by Commissioner Martin and seconded by Commissioner Hidalgo Faring. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. Harold, you had one more thing?
Yep, so this actually came up within the last 3 days. I think it was 3 days. So I want to remind the board, the commissioners, that on January 31st, 2023, you all adopted a resolution 2023-02. It was a resolution of the Longmont City Housing Authority approving a tax exemption partnership with Xenia LLP. That resolution actually directed the interim executive director to take the appropriate actions to enter into the partnership, which there's some language in there that talks about the different documents that we need to sign, and then it has a section in there that says other documents as needed. In the course of negotiating the partnership agreement within, as we're finalizing it, it really became apparent that what we wanted to do from the Housing Authority standpoint is the formation of a LLC for the Housing Authority, and so this is Longmont Housing Authority Ventures LLC. The reason we wanted to do that is because it actually creates, it helps us manage liability on this project. As we began looking at that authorization of being able to sign the documents, let me back up. This LLC is wholly owned by the Housing Authority. It's merely an insulator for the liability that we have should something arise. It was unclear whether or not other documents meant this, so I didn't want to outrun the commission's headlights on this one, so I wanted to verify that you all were okay. So what we're requesting is authorization of the formation of Longmont Housing Authority Ventures LLC. We'll be the sole member and manager of that LLC, and it'll act as a Class B limited partner in the partnership that will own and operate the Xenia apartments. Execution by the interim executive director of a written consent of the LLC authorizing it to enter into the Xenia partnership agreement transactions, which include the addendum to, what's LPA? I forgot that one. Limited partnership, admitting the LLC to the partnership as a Class B limited partner, the right of first offer, and related documents. So that's a lot of legal jargon that we needed to have in this authorization so that the investors can allow this to move forward. But again, there was a section that we looked at with other documents, but I just wanted to make sure that you all were okay with us taking that approach. Again, this is solely to manage liability.
Okay, do we have any questions from counselors? Will you say once again, Harold, in language that I can understand?
I think I would just say allowing us allowing me to sign the documents to form the Longmont Housing Authority Ventures LLC.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion from a commissioner to allow this? Councilor Waters?
Thanks. I'll be happy to make the motion. I just want to clarify that. Are we talking about, and you probably said it and I just missed it. Are we creating a new nonprofit? This LLC is a nonprofit?
No, it's a for-profit, but is it for-profit?
It's just a special purpose entity.
Yeah, it's a special purpose entity.
It's a corporation?
Correct.
Profit or nonprofit?
Officially, that would be for profit, but
yeah, officially it's for profit.
Governed by?
The Longmont Housing Authority.
So we would be the board, of this LLC.
Correct.
It'll be a for-profit subsidiary of LHA?
Let me work through that.
And is there a set of, I would assume there's a set of bylaws that either exist or we will have a chance to approve.
Yes, and we will have to bring those to you all at the next meeting. I think that's.
Yes. We can ratify those at your next LHA board meeting. So right now, it's just the consent to enter into the partnership, and then we can ratify after the fact.
So I have and I'll make the motion just in 30 seconds. I have no qualms about making the motion, but I do have concerns that I want to be clear on the form, the nature of the LLC. I get us as the governance. I'd like to see what those, and where it fits in terms of a structure, right? And in the bylaws, probably not so much the articles of incorporation, there would be some stipulations in terms of meeting schedules at least once a year, and financials and how those are going to get reported and to whom, those kinds of issues.
Correct. And it's very similar. I mean, if you remember when we went in the Chrisman partnership, I believe we did the same thing in the Chrisman partnership. And so we didn't think we were going to need it in this case based on the nature of the fact that we're not a co-developer. That's when you do tend to see us come in with this piece when we're in a co-developer arrangement. There were just some components that we felt better in talking to our legal counsel in terms of establishing this LLC in terms of minimizing. But yeah, we have to bring it back to you at the next Longmont Housing Authority meeting.
So to move this forward, the motion would be to approve creation of the LLC. I'll move creation of this LLC.
So that's been moved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Yarbrough. I do have a question. Commissioner, I have to say this again. So that has been moved by Commissioner Waters, seconded by Commissioner Yarbrough. My question is, because this is a for-profit, does that change the tax structure of anything? Because
not on the Housing Authority.
But you will have to file a different tax form for a for-profit LLC.
Yes, and we do have those on most other properties, and we do file those each year.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. Can I have a motion to adjourn? So Councilor Martin moved to adjourn as the Longmont Housing Authority Board of Commissioners and reconvene as the Longmont City Council, seconded by Commissioner McCoy. Did I call you a commissioner? Yes. Good. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Molly and Harold. So the next thing on our general business agenda is a bill for an ordinance amending section 2.04.207 of the Longmont Fair Campaign Practices Act to remove references to post offices. If it passes, public hearing and second reading is on June 6th, 2023. So where are we on this? There. Yes.
Before we ever get into the substance of this, in preparation, I did spend some time with the charter and our rules of procedures, and I'm just curious how what we're about to do comports with Article 4, Section 4.8 of the city charter.
So to amend that ordinance?
Well, the point of order really is what we're about to do. I don't see how it could be consistent with Section 4.8 of the city charter.
I think that is a question for our city attorney, who is looking it up.
Well, I can read it to you.
Let's hear from legal, please.
Council, what's the question?
How is what we're about to consider, before we get into the consideration of the substance of an ordinance change, how does getting into that, how can we do that and be consistent with Article 4.8 of the city charter?
So 4.8 is about the Ordinance Revision Committee. I think that is a separate committee to look at recommendations for revision, codification, arrangement, and publication of such ordinances. I think that the first reading, second reading of the ordinance is proceeding under chapter or charter section 4.5, procedure for passage. Introduction at any regular or special meeting is, I think, the stage that we're at.
The language in 4.8 is not permissive. The word is shall is used multiple times in that provision, in that section of the city charter. We are and have not been in compliance with that section of the city charter. So I'm just curious, as a point of order, how what's your guidance? What are the other parts of the city charter we can ignore because we simply choose to, even though the language is directive, not permissive? It says we shall. And the only place in the city charter, and the only reason I am there is I was looking for guidance on what to do or not to do, what we can or can't do in terms of requirements for reporting of addresses, right? I was looking for guidance from the charter, couldn't find it in the city, or in the rules and procedures. But then here's this paragraph that specifically addresses ordinance revision that we're not in compliance with. And we're about to consider an ordinance revision.
Councilmember Waters, so reading the nature of this paragraph, it seems like looking at the code in general, since the charge is to make recommendations for revisions, codification, arrangement, and publication, more sort of procedural matters. I don't know the full history of the city of Longmont. You are correct, there is the word shall establish a committee. The last sentence says, I think after it has done this, it will do so periodically thereafter. And so I don't know if we're in a period where we want to be doing this or not. We haven't had council direction on this. I assume at the beginning they established this committee and made recommendations as provided for in the charter.
Well, I know there's been no council direction because we've never discussed it. But there's nowhere else in the city charter where there's a specific requirement for the review of a recommended ordinance, revision in an ordinance, except here. Now, there are other places where it talks about procedure, right? First reading, second reading, those kinds of things. The way an ordinance or an amendment should be stated, how clearly it should be stated, has to be in writing, those kinds of things. But in terms of the process, that is the only place in the charter that I can find, unless you can point me to something else, that establishes a procedure that we are not in compliance with.
There is 4.7, which we are in compliance with, which was codification.
Well, we're talking about the revision of an ordinance, not the codification of it. The ordinance is already codified. We already heard the number.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this provision 4.8 is about specific ordinances. The charge is committee shall make recommendations for the revision, codification, arrangement, and publication of such ordinances.
So the advice of city attorney is to just disregard this section of the city charter.
That's not what I said, Councilmember Waters.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying that the charge is for recommendations for revision, codification, arrangement, and publication. In order to do that, you need to form the committee. I don't know in the history of Longmont whether such committee has been formed. The charter appears to say, form this committee, do these recommendations, and then periodically thereafter, when council directs.
So if we proceed with the substance of this, we will be doing so in a way that is or is not consistent with the city charter.
I think it's consistent with provision 4.5, the passage of an ordinance. And that this provision is about looking at the code as a whole and making recommendations for revision, codification, arrangement, and publication.
Can
Those-
I interrupt it when you're finished with that sentence?
Those are not what we're doing here. We're not recommending about arrangement or publication or codification.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Okay?
Since I think I've heard you say you're not sure, since you've never dealt with this.
Correct. But I can read the plain language.
Well, I can too. So since I don't need a law degree to have my own interpretation of what it means, that we're out of compliance with that part of the city council, that part of the city charter, whether it has to do with this ordinance or not.
That is certainly your right to have that interpretation.
Okay, because I'll come back to that when we get into the discussion about accountability and transparency and set it in the kind of example that we want to set. But I just wanted
And
to
this is
clarify.
a directive for council to establish this committee.
Thank you.
Not the city attorney.
Thank you.
So I have a question. The original ordinance that we want to amend, why did that go through fine? I mean, we made an ordinance to begin with, and there was no question about that. Now we're just amending that ordinance. So I guess I don't see.
I mean, my answer is it complied with Charter 4.5, passage of an ordinance. We introduced it.
It was a new
We
ordinance.
had a hearing. I mean, we just followed the procedure described in 4.5 for passage of an ordinance.
Okay. Counselor Martin. You know, are you going to discuss the, here's my question. If we are going to make a motion to pass it, then the discussion should come within that, after that, if it gets a second. Am I making sense? I mean, that is the procedure. Make a motion, second it, discuss.
Yes, and I'm actually, I have my opinions about this motion, but I'm really still on the charter because the way I read it, it doesn't sound like a new ordinance has to be recommended by this committee, but amendments to ordinances do. And so I would like to know what committee recommended this amendment and why was it a committee?
You know, I'm going with the legal advice here.
I can repeat what I said. I believe an ordinance is passed under Charter 4.5, that council has not formed this committee, and therefore it's not addressing the matters provided for in the charter for revision, codification, arrangement, and publication of such ordinances. Right, I don't think there's really a distinction between amending an ordinance and creating a new ordinance under Charter 4.5. It is an ordinance that amends.
So to clarify this before we move any further, do we need to create a committee? And would that be a Fair Campaign Practices Act committee?
I think it's council's discretion when to form the 4.8 committee, since it says periodically thereafter.
Okay. So then let's, Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Pecca. Well, I was going to move the ordinance and then see if there's a second and then have a conversation if that is all right.
Okay.
I'd like to move ordinance 0-2023, a bill for an ordinance amending sections 2.04.207 of the Longmont Fair Campaign Practices Act to remove reference to post office boxes.
Okay, so that ordinance has been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring. Is there discussion? Councilor Martin?
Yes, I don't understand why we would want to do this. I voted against putting this on the agenda to discuss it. There is no secrecy involved here. that is not appropriate. There's no requirement in this charter that a person who donates to a committee, a campaign, lives in Longmont. There are essentially no requirements at all about them other than that they be a person, either flesh and blood or corporate. And both kinds of person are now treated the same. Frown. So we have lots of other situations in elections law where there are good and proper reasons why a person should not be required to reveal their street address. We live in dangerous times, and it's more essential than ever and more normal than ever for people not to want their address to be in the public record. You know, that we had an example just now that the school district didn't want students' addresses to be in the public record, and we accepted that. I can't imagine what sort of contribution fraud could be associated with someone willing to reveal their name, but they are not willing, but they are reluctant to, I said that backwards. Someone willing to reveal their name should not be required to reveal their street address if they don't do that as a matter of course. For example, a person who is subject to domestic abuse and is being stalked by her ex may care a lot about which candidate gets elected to represent that person, but doesn't want to reveal their street address, and the state and county elections actually allows a person with such a restraining order to not put their physical address even in the voting records. So it seems very bizarre to me that we would want a street address from a donor when they're just a donor. You know, they're a person with the subject to the same external arguments as anybody else. This amounts to donor suppression. We're very grateful that we don't live in a place that has voter suppression, but voter suppression statutes, when they happen in other places less enlightened, are argued for on the basis of preventing fraud. And I think that this is somehow conflated with the idea that we're preventing fraud. But in fact, it doesn't. And there's no reason it should, and there's no reason that someone who is reluctant to put their address in the public record should be required to, any more than they are required so to vote, as long as they can prove their residency and citizenship and eligibility to vote. So I will not vote for this.
Thank you. Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. I'm just going to build on some of what Councilmember Martin just had to share. And I'm going to ask a question. I hope somebody might answer it, but I'm not going to pause to wait for the answer because that would count as my one of two times
That's right.
weighing in. So I'm going to ask the question and hope somebody will come back to it. But the first question really is, what problem are we trying to solve? Because I don't, and what new problems are we going to create in trying to solve whatever we think the first problem is? Because I, for the life of me, I cannot see what problem allowing a P.O. box with a name, a P.O. box number, and a municipality, or wherever it's located. If it's not a municipality, I guess a county. What problem that creates that requiring an address solves? Number one, that's a question. Number two, building on what Councilmember Martin said, every Tuesday night, people come here. There's nothing, by the way, the reason I went into the charter was to look for guidance or some requirement that people have to give us their address. There's nothing in the charter, nothing in our rules and procedures that require somebody to exercise their First Amendment right of political speech, which happens every Tuesday night, which is what we were talking about a few minutes ago, We do not require, and I don't think we should. Mayor Peck, you ask for that address, you don't require it, nor do I think you should, because of the very reason that Councilmember McCoy, the term you used a few minutes ago was the chilling effect that has on people. The reason we heard from 50 high school seniors up here over the last 3 weeks, only one of which offered their home address, is because they were advised, as Councilmember Barton pointed out, not to share their home addresses out of their own personal concerns about personal security. The reason we don't require people to do it on Tuesday nights. But that's one form of political speech. If you go and look at the definition of and examples of political speech, another example of political speech, by definition, is donating to candidates. So we're going to create a double standard. We're going to say if you want to exercise one form of political speech, you can protect your right to privacy. But if you live in Longmont or you want to support a Longmont candidate, you do not have the opportunity to protect your personal address by using a P.O. box. You have to have your address in the public record. Now, with that, if you happen to be living in a car in a safe lot and you had $50 you wanted to donate, can't do that because you don't have an address. If you are a senior Longmont resident living in the RV life and you collect your mail in Longmont at a P.O. box, you don't get to participate either. You can come and speak on Tuesday night, but we are going to deny you the right to exercise your right to political speech under the First Amendment because you don't have a mailing address. And I can go from there. It's the women or men that the Councilmember Martin mentioned who are, for security reasons, legally able to keep their addresses out of the public record. I mean, we're saying to a whole section of our community, you don't get to participate in this political process by supporting candidates with a donation to their campaign, with all the accountability coming on the candidates. It's not on them. Our campaign reports have a name, have a dollar amount. We are not allowed to accept a donation anonymously. We all know that. We have now more rigorous reporting campaigns in most municipalities. I don't know about others, but it's rigorous. We're limited to $260. You got to have a name, you got to have an address or a P.O. box. What problem does the P.O. box solve that the other problems we're creating with the messages we're going to deliver to our residents to say, your money is not wanted, or you are not worthy, or you are not eligible to exercise your First Amendment protected right to political speech by donating $50 to a candidate? Somebody help me understand the rationale for that before we cast a vote, please.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Well, when we all apply to run for office, we have to go out and get a certain number of signatures to get our name on the ballot. When we collect those signatures have to be associated with a physical address, not a P.O. box or anything like that. Has to be associated with a physical address. And I sincerely believe that there is a difference between someone coming up here and maybe not necessarily sharing that, especially students, minors, giving their school address opposed to their home address. And I don't think that's the same as asking people to go ahead and say, hey, we can accept money. You can accept money, I can accept money from my aunt in Tennessee if I wanted to. I just have to write down that it was from her and her address. There's no problem with that. There's no sense there. And as far as some of the other arguments, I think you may have a few isolated exceptions, but I don't really think that that is the overwhelming percentage of what's happening in Longmont. And I respect your point of view and everything, but I still think that this is one of those changes that people want to know, and I don't think there's any harm in it. So I'm going to be supporting this, as I was the one that made the motion. So I'm not going to argue out every specific case that you both brought up, but, you know, I feel like this is the right thing.
Okay, seeing no one else, I will tell why I made this motion to begin with. And it has to be because in January of 2010, the Supreme Court, working with a group called Citizens United, granted corporations and nonprofits the status of personhood. And for me, with that distinction came all the privileges of human beings. In elections, names and addresses are required for persons donating to a campaign. And it's my opinion that names and addresses should be required of corporations and nonprofits, and contributions, of course, be limited to what real people have to pay, which is $260, based upon their personhood status. So if they are to be labeled as persons, then I think that they should also be providing their addresses, and probably the name would be the agent who formed the corporation. Any entity or capital under that corporation can also individually contribute. We're not limiting people, but a corporation is a person, and they worked very hard to get that status. So I think we should honor it and treat them as a person, getting their address. Two more comments, fast, Counselor, because I think we all know where we stand on this anyway. That's right. So Counselor Martin's in the queue, so go ahead.
Oh, I thought that you were calling on Councilmember Waters.
No, not yet.
It seems like we've already taken care of the corporation problem in our last round of amendments, and I'm actually not sure that was really necessary, because you know, if the name turns out to be the name of a corporation, then it prevents the actual human that is the agent of that corporation from making a separate contribution. So in fact, I mean, I have received any number of donations from corporations, and they always used the name of their corporation and not the name of their agent when they made the donation. And I think they all used an office address for that matter. So I, again, would like to understand how allowing a P.O. box, which was, you know, it's not required anywhere in the charter that people do that, and there are places in election law where it is absolutely required that people be allowed to keep their physical, residential, human, flesh and blood address out of the public record. And I think we would be doing a deep wrong, you know, to prohibit people from using that P.O. box. It is no different than refusing to take a student ID and permitting someone to permit someone to register to vote. It is voter suppression, and it is deeply wrong. And I hope that everyone who has taken contributions from corporations will reflect severely on that difference.
Thank you, Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Just for what it's worth, I had a chance to look at the statutory language today on CORA, right? The open meetings, or the CORA, the statutory language that allows for requests to open records. Even in that, it stipulates that the custodian of the records they do not give out addresses of folks on either who made the inquiry or the people about whom it's made, because of the right to privacy, which is also guaranteed by the Constitution, both the 14th and 5th Amendments to the Constitution. But if we do this, it just sure feels to me like we are saying, as a council, that we don't respect the right to privacy for those people who want to protect it, number one. Number two, I've supported the other changes I've supported the other changes in our Fair Campaign Act. I haven't agreed with all of them, but I voted for them because I share the concerns about the influences of money and the lack of accountability. But we've done a pretty good job, I think, with those requirements in terms of the reporting system. But to the people who, they're using P.O. boxes because they've been vandalized. And I happen to have a brother who owns several UPS franchises in the Scottsdale area. And I was curious, I asked what percentage of your customers use, they call them personal mailboxes as opposed to P.O. boxes, use those because of their snowbirds or whatever. He said, well, that's about half. The other half have had their mailboxes vandalized. And they're concerned about their security and the security of their mail. This is more about the reasons why somebody would have a P.O. box. It's been conflated, as Councilmember Martin said, with somehow hiding something. It's like, really? It's as documentable as an address. And I guess the last thing I'd say one more time, if we were so concerned a few minutes ago when we passed a change in our rules and procedures about addressing the council during public invite, if we were so concerned then about chilling and having a chilling effect, why are we so unconcerned about what this action would do in chilling folks who want to participate in our democratic process by donating to candidates? I hope somebody can explain that, but hopefully get a chance to talk about this more on May 30th in our open forum. Let's really get at it. Let's hear from the public about why would we be systematically excluding a part of this community, knowingly and willfully excluding a part of this community from participating in our election cycle.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, are there any other counselors that want to, I'm sorry, for you?
Councilmember Yarbrough was just clarifying if it's first reading or second reading, and I clarified this would be a first.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. So, seeing no one else in the queue, let's vote. And I do want to remind people that, whoops, my time's up. Sorry. Yeah, it was. That this is about fair campaign practice acts. It's not about standing up here, which is a totally different issue to the public. And the thing about the students at Silver Creek High School is that they did give an address. They gave an address so that if you want to talk to them or their Carrie Adams about their project that they're working on, you have a place to contact their advisor and work through that system so there was an address. This is how you can contact this person. So let's vote. So that carried with Councilor Martin, Councilor Rodriguez, and Councilor Waters in opposition. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item C, and our City Clerk, Dawn Quintana, is going to talk about 2023-24, a bill for an ordinance amending Title II, Sections 2.04.010 and 2.04.025, and Figure 2.04.025 of the Longmont Municipal Code on election, ward, and precinct boundaries. And we all have a map that she gave us in front of us. So we'll turn it over to Dawn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I did make a very brief presentation because this will be the third or fourth time we've been before you. But I did want to, for the benefit of the public and for just to remind the council, because it has been a while, where we started and where we are at now. So this is our current ward map as it sits currently. I recognize it's hard to see what's happening there on the screen, but as you can see, the population is not balanced, meaning there's quite a substantial difference between Ward 1 at almost 37,000 population and Ward 3 with about 26,000 population. So our charter says that we must redistrict every 10 years. Redistricting is a process of adjusting the lines to create balance between the three wards. And you'll recall that our challenge was the charter states that we should balance, or not should, shall, back to important words, shall balance by our voters and the Supreme Court upholds balancing by population. So our charge was to see if we could do both in one process and balance both in one configuration. So that's in Charter 2.6. Every 10 years, we will redistrict. We did it in 2012. So we began this process in 2022, 10 years later, and here we are bringing you a map for consideration for adoption tonight. If we want new boundaries to be in effect for the coming council election in November, we need to have this completed before July 10th of 2023. Again, another charter requirement says we've got to do that 120 days prior to the election. So our objectives for any redistricting process are to meet all of these criteria to balance the population, manage racial equality, keep the wards compact and contiguous, preserve existing precinct boundaries, preserve communities of interest, comply with all the laws in the land, not favor or disfavor a political party, and not move somebody out of their own ward or district, as it were. So we've met all of these criteria, we believe, with getting the public's feedback, and we'll get there. The second objective was, as I just discussed, to balance both population and voters. Our charge, per the Supreme Court, and a legal advice memo from the Colorado Municipal League, our charge is to balance those with a 5% more or 5% under range, so a total 10% possible range, or deviation as they call it, but I've heard mathematically deviation isn't the right word, so range is mine. 10% is our goal. Third, you all gave us a grand charge to engage the public. We used various platforms to do so, engaged Longmont, social media, the regular city communication outlets, presentation to NGLA. We've done a couple open houses. I've had various residents just come in and ask questions, done various direct resident engagements. And these are all outlined in a council communication that I linked to in the council communication in this packet. So what we did was we created 3 maps. We took 3 possibilities out to the public and asked for their comment. This was option 1, moving the hashtag, the precinct showing with hashtags were the ones that would be moving from Ward 1 and Ward 2, again, into Ward 3 to increase the numbers in Ward 3, which was is a little lower. The second option moved a couple precincts in the middle of town right there. Those hashtags 616 and 627, maybe. I can't remember, read that number myself, but that was the second option. And then the third option was this one where we moved 615 into Ward 2, 626 and 27 on the west corner, middle west edge into Ward 3, and then 650 up there in the north central part of town, also into Ward 3. So when we took those maps out for comment, by and large, we did various methods of public engagement, as I noted and as noted in the communication. We took those 3 maps out from December 12th through March. Everybody unanimously favored option 3 over any of the other 2 options. So we took that option back to the drawing board, reanalyzed some of our data, and we came out with option 3B, which is this revised option, which the hashtags are a little lighter here. I'm sorry, let me see if I can use my mouse. Moved this, again, 650 from Ward 1 over to Ward 3, and then 626 and 627 from Ward 2 up into Ward 3. By doing nothing with 615 down here, which was option 3, by not moving that precinct, we were allowed to hit that target of a balanced configuration in terms of population and voters within that 10% range. It's an interesting puzzle process. So if you like puzzles, this is a great task. So option 3B, we put that out for comment from March 24th through April 21st. Our communications team helped us do some targeted communications via Nextdoor to those particular neighborhoods or those particular areas of town that would experience change. We received really minimal engagement. It's just not an exciting topic, as it turns out. And no comments in opposition. So everybody that I've talked to has been in favor of what we are presenting as a final option, which you all have the paper copy of, which moves 650 up in the, just gonna review it one more time, 650 up here from Ward 1 over to Ward 3, and then 626 and 27, which are like Twin Peaks Golf Course area, from Ward 2 up into Ward 3. Lastly, you'll notice on this map we have these red lines, bold red lines that kind of where the wards intersect. That's different from our last map that we adopted. And you'll notice in the language, instead of creating language that walks you around the perimeter of every of each ward, which was super tedious and not exactly clear all the time. Our attorney, Tim Hull, looked around at other options, at what other cities do, and Montrose actually uses this method. They draw this line, and so in the language in the ordinance, if there's any land annexed after we adopt this map, then that land within the red line would fall within that ward. So it makes clearer for when we annex, because we had a conversation about what do you do when you annex something and then it's immediately inaccurate. So that was the way we came up. That's a little bit different than what's currently in code and presented in your packet for adoption. We would put this on public hearing and second reading on Tuesday, June 6th. If passed tonight, this is a first reading, but we did it on general business because we wanted to give you a presentation and give you a chance to discuss, not just assume it was blessed. And that really is the process. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from counselors? I have a question for you, Dawn.
Okay.
Do you like puzzles?
I do like puzzles. Not math
Good.
puzzles so much.
Good. So can we have an ordinance, a motion to move this ordinance? Whoops.
And we'll need
Turn
you
you
to
on, Counselor McCoy.
hand vote.
I move the general business C 0-2023-24 as presented here. Thank you, Don. You've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
My students would be envious of you. Spent a week on this.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so 2023-24 has been moved by Counselor McCoy, seconded by Counselor Hidalgo-Faring. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
If you would raise your hands, please, Mayor.
Oh, that's
because
right.
I'm not over there. Thank you.
All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We are now at final call, public invited to be heard. Is there anybody in the public? Gary Hodges. It's late, Gary.
There, check, check. Hi, thanks for this opportunity for a second invited. First, there was debate and there was a motion that wasn't unanimous. Wow, I appreciated that. I get a little frustrated sometimes when I'm down here and everything is unanimous. 2148 Stewart Street, I don't mind giving my address. So my career is atmospheric science, but a real love of mine is economics, and particularly incentives. And I just want to follow up a bit on my first 3 minutes. As economists will say, if you can identify the incentive, you can predict the behavior. And that's actually rather powerful. It's not always easy to do that, and that's really the magic in economics is trying to figure that out. So to follow on with my perverse incentives that I was pointing out, things that I think might arise with this pursuit, affordable housing pursuit that was presented some weeks ago. Yeah, so let's say somebody's been in a house, 6 years, and then they get a job in Castle Rock. And they're like, oh, we could move down there, but they're like, oh, but if we stay in this house 4 more years, we get to sell it for market rate. you know, I think I'm just going to commute. Or, you know, they could be Cheyenne. It could be even out of state. You know, some man or woman could move to Maryland or something, and the spouse stays here and maintains a household just because the payoff is so big. You know, it could be literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that they might get. Councilman McCoy said, hey, if we do these, I want them intermixed around in neighborhoods. And, well, I see the reasoning in that, but what's maybe the perverse incentive there? If somebody's house is only increasing at whatever, some marginal rate, 2%, how motivated are they to paint their house when it needs paint? So now all of a sudden the neighbors who are market rate houses, they have a house with somebody who doesn't have motivation to keep the house up. So these are the kinds of things I was thinking about when I made the comment. I was scratching notes during the presentation some weeks ago, and it's the kind of stuff I would just really encourage is really, you know, what are the perverse incentives that you might be setting up when you pass policy? I understand the motivation, you know, the affordable housing. I mean, everybody sort of gets it, but I'm not really sure you can crack that nut without you know, bringing up or bringing to the forefront these unfortunate perverse incentives, and then you end up trying to squash those, and they pop up somewhere else. So just you know, just be cautious and be thoughtful, and make sure that something isn't being done that makes the situation worse. So that's all I want to say. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Steve?
I know the voting was done already, but some thoughts about what you were talking about. First of all, I'm not a lawyer, and I've never been a builder either. But when you were talking about the quasi system, pardon? Yeah, what he said. You know, the first thought that came to my mind when I heard about this was the First Amendment. It's like, how dare anybody tell me when it's open for free speech what I can talk about and what I can't. But I can understand a little bit of the legal end of it where you don't want to like taint someone's thought process or overwhelm somebody. So I can understand a little bit of it. But since I'm not a builder and I don't know all the laws, the thought that came to my mind was, what's to stop a builder from filing an application first before there's any conversation about where he wants to build? Because I would think, you know, you go down to the city, you file an application. You know, that would stop any conversation about what he wants to do if you do that application first. Again, unless there's laws against it, I don't know. When you were talking about forming an LLC and you'd be a for-profit, my question was, who gets that profit and how is it spent? So again, I don't know if there's rules about that already in place. And I'm curious why the city of Longmont is even in the property ownership business. To me, that is something that should be citizen-owned or something like that, not city-owned. And when you were talking about the donations and the addresses, when I first heard about this, my first thought was, you want accountability. You want to know where somebody lives. What's to stop somebody from sending in 5 $240 checks with just different P.O. boxes? But then I was told that there is someone's name on there, but there might be more than, there's probably not more than one Steve Altshuler, but there could be more than one Marsha Martin in Longmont. So there has to be some way to verify the level of donations that are being made. And as long as that's covered, then I would agree that the actual address is not necessary. But those are things that do need to be thought about, and maybe you have already, but those are my thoughts. So have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. So now we're at mayor and council comments. Whoops. Oh, I didn't see you, Lance. Sorry.
Name's Lance Whitaker, 1750 Collier Street. Apparently, Glenn told me that I didn't tell you what National Day it was, so I have to come back and discuss that. Today is National Taffy Day. It is also National Lucky Penny Day, and it seems like every one of you need a lucky penny today. There is a quote that sort of fits in today's council. When I was a balloon pilot, that sort of fits it in today's council, and that is that takeoffs are optional, but landings are mandatory. So, happy landing. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. You know what, Lance? I was afraid you were going to say a lot of hot air.
Oh.
And I'm glad you didn't.
Well, not on landing. On landing, you need more cold air.
Okay. We're now at mayor and council comments. Do we have any comments from councilors? Councilor McCoy.
I'll make it quick. Just remind people out there that school's ending for the summer and kids are going to be out and about, and just be aware as you're backing out of your driveway and things like that. Kids don't always necessarily observe the rules of the road. So,
Thank you. The other thing that I want to say is that, I see a couple more have popped in here. Please don't wear all black at night. It is so frustrating to not be able to see a pedestrian or somebody on a bike because they're wearing all black. So put something bright on, your shoes, your bike, your backs, whatever, so that we can see you. Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor Peg. Yes, we have those bracelets that light up.
Yes.
There you go. Let's see. Very good conversation. Thank you, co-counselors. I am looking forward to open forum to hear more about that discussion and what our community, I'm just being 100% like kind of torn, because I understand with myself when I was running for office and the threats that I had, and no matter what, I had to give my physical address. And so I understand too that our community within the emails want transparency as well. So I'm looking forward to the open forum to hear from our community, those who care about this. So thank you for the conversation and the thoughtfulness of everybody coming in with their opinions and actual facts and all of that. Go Nuggets. Wanted to make sure we said that. And then also, I want to mention, I know we're getting closer to Juneteenth. And for our wonderful resident, Coach Prime, that's in the city of Longmont, I'm putting it out there. I would love for him to attend our Juneteenth celebrations here in the city of Longmont. Let him know we got it going on. You know, come see us. This is you are now a Longmonster. So come on. And then also, I also want to mention that our wonderful city manager will be making sure that he goes on vacation with his wonderful family before the end of the year, because the last thing we want is a burnout. So thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Here, here. Counselor, I'm going to try to pull you up next. Was she, okay, Counselor Martin. Here you go.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I would just like to say for the record that we spent a long amount of time designing the restrictions on our our inclusionary zoning statute. And so I'd be really surprised if someone could scam it by timing their sales, because they are statutorily permanently affordable.
Counselor Hidalgo Faring.
I wasn't going to mention it, but then, you know, if our parks people are out here, but I think they already left. They're done. But I took my kids, our third graders went on a field trip to Golden Ponds. And I just kind of wanted to commend the work that our parks and natural spaces are doing. with following the trails. I mean, we were herding about 45 8-year-olds. Yeah. I'm really tired. But they did, it was a phenomenal job. And the ease of being able to keep them to the right as cyclists and other pedestrians were coming the other way. You know, I was very proud about them adhering. It was like, please don't fall in the water and don't get run over by a bike. I'm taking you back safe and sound. But just the structure, it was really, it was a great visit, and we were really pleased with the outcomes and just how our parks are put together. So no, it was a shout out to the work that they're doing. Thanks.
One last comment. We've got goats. I'm very happy to say. I see Rachel. For fire, we're testing them out for fire mitigation on open space, which I think is very exciting. So if you want to see them, I think they're at Alpine in 17. Is that? Oh, they're U Creek Golf Course. Okay, more on pace. And so if you want to see the goats, if you have kids that want to go see the goats, they'll be gone on Thursday. So this is a pilot program. Take them out to see the goats. Hopefully they'll eat.
Just don't walk on the golf course when people are golfing, because it can be dangerous.
Is goat golfing like goat yoga?
Maybe.
No. Oh, okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I don't know. Do we want to hear?
No comments, Mayor Council.
I'm sorry, I'm losing it up here. City manager, no comments? City attorney?
I've sent plenty, Mayor, no comments.
Thank you. Now can I have a motion? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay.